The following contains minor spoilers for the beginning of God of War Ragnarok. You have been warned. Greetings, fellow mortals. When I first saw the design for Thor in the lead up to God of War Ragnarok, I felt rather underwhelmed. I was used to seeing Chris Hemsworth looking like a steroid-enhanced demigod with an inhuman physique. Not to mention that I had been a fan of the God of War series since the beginning of the entire franchise. In every single game, the Greek gods and demigods looked like they were carved out of marble. After a few minutes of thinking, however, I realized that I shouldn't have a problem with Thor's design in Ragnarok. In fact, I should like it. After all, this interpretation of Norse mythology is far closer to the original tales than the MCU ever was. Even though I did love Thor in that version, the Marvel version of Asgard was very pretty, futuristic, and ideal. That's not exactly something that was ever associated with Vikings. The God of War version of Thor was actually what I would picture when I was thinking of a Norse Viking, a giant with a massive gut. So I decided to give it a chance, and boy, I was not let down. From the moment that I was first introduced to Thor, I was awestruck. He oozed intimidation. It was like the world would cry out in pain if he punched the dirt. After hearing all of the stories about him in the 2018 game, I expected him to be a loud, brash jerk. He was surprisingly calm and collected when he needed to be, but when he didn't need to be, he just was plain nuts. That first boss fight with Thor was insane. Not going to lie, when the game messed with me by giving me a fake game over screen only for Thor to resurrect me to fight more, I freaked out. From that point on, I was eager to see any scene with him in it. Part of me felt like I was on the wrong side of the game. Thor was the Kratos of the Norse world. It's just that he didn't get to finish his arc like the God of War did. I don't know about you, but that's a story in a game that I wanted to play. It made me want to compare these two popular versions of Thor. Not that I want either of them to go away. Chris Hemsworth Thor will always hold a place in my heart. His bombastic personality, glowing presence, and raw charisma pulled him forward. Hemsworth did a great job performing a prideful man with all the power in the world. At the same time, his insecurity comes off in waves. He doesn't know what his place in the world is, even though he's been told to be king for his entire life. Plus, there's his relationships with other people. First and foremost is his family. His love-hate dynamic with Loki is something that was never topped in the MCU and was sorely missed with both characters as the story progressed. Plus, there's the struggle to live up to his father, the gentler side that he shows only to his mother, and all of his other reactions with the Avengers. It was always interesting to see him bounce off other established characters. As someone from another world, he was the biggest fish out of water there was, and this is taking into account that Captain America was a man out of time. That's one thing from God of War Ragnarok that I didn't exactly get to see much. I wanted to watch Thor interact with more people. I wanted to see his past outside of the tales from Mimir, which could have been very one-sided. Not to say that Thor was ever a good person, but this is a series where we play as Kratos, the ghost of Sparta, the god of war, the slayer of the pantheon. I doubt that Thor did anything that Kratos hasn't topped hundreds of times over. You know someone's a good character if I want to see them interact with others. I wanted to see more of Thor with Heimdall. I wanted to watch God of War's version of the Odin and Thor dynamic. I wished to see how Thor interacted with Balder, not to mention Loki. Plus, there was still Thor's wife and daughter. I didn't get to see enough of that. It's a shame. It makes me wonder how this entire story would have played out without Kratos involved. I know, throwing Kratos in all of this was the point, but I wouldn't mind a spin-off what-if type of game series, comic books, or just regular books that show more of the Norse world without the lens of Kratos' family. I just want more, which is more than I can say for the MCU Thor at this point. I already made a video a while ago about how I thought the MCU should retire that character. But that's because Chris Hemsworth's Thor kind of jumped the shark already. MCU Thor learned how to be a king 3 times, lost everything, failed over and over again, got fat, beat Thanos, got back in shape, and went through whatever the point of Love and Thunder was. Hemsworth has 11 years and 9 movies worth of storytelling behind him. That's similar to the original God of War run. If they want to keep that character around, they need to go in a drastically new direction with him. At the same time, I can't sit here and say that God of War Thor is completely better. After all, we only get one game with him, and it's a big game, 45 hours if you do absolutely everything, but there's only about 2 or 3 hours with Thor in it. All I can say is that the writers and voice actor did a great job bringing him to life and making me feel invested. It felt like he was about to start his own road to redemption when the events of Ragnarok unfolded. So we're at the crossroads of one character having too much content behind him and another character not having enough screen time. In terms of looks, charisma, and power, they seem to be on equal footing in different ways. And this isn't actually a power level contest, especially considering both interpretation of the character's strength was never fully clear. If I had to go with my gut, I would say that the God of War version of Thor was a little stronger, just because he beat the ever-loving hell out of Kratos and didn't seem physically challenged by barely anything in the game. But that might not be fair because MCU's Thor didn't need a weapon. Sometimes it was never consistent what his power level was. Basically, he was as tough as the writers required in that moment. So I guess it depends on which version of the MCU Thor that we get. I will say that God of War Thor had a control over Mjolnir that I thought was super interesting to watch though. So in a fight within my mind, I guess that they come out pretty equally in a tie. The MCU storyline with their version is too redundant. At the same time, the God of War version didn't get enough time to shine. But if I had to pick one under the threat of death, I guess that I would pick God of War Ragnarok. Of course, that might not be fair. After all, the game is fresh in my mind, and I'm at the point where all I want is more of it. So, take it as you will. This isn't to say that the MCU version of Thor can't be fixed and redeemed. Theoretically, they could take the character into a wild and fantastic new direction, just like what happened with Kratos in God of War. Of course, Chris Hemsworth is taking a break because he discovered that he has a heightened risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. I don't exactly know all the details with that. If he has early onset Alzheimer's disease, then that's terrible. Or it could be that he's just trying to get his mind together about it. Or he could be wanting to stop his extreme workout routine for the sake of his health. So there is a chance that we could be done with that version of Thor, or we could get him back sometime soon. I don't know. All I know is that I want him to focus on himself. His life is more important than our entertainment. I'm not some fanboy that'll be panicking that he's gone and that the MCU will be hurt. Despite how much I love storytelling, real life always comes first. I wish him well and hope that future medical advances can help him. Anyway, moving on from that super serious topic, if there's anything that I want people to get out of this video, it's to see that different versions of old mythological characters can all be great. I'd love to see more adaptations of Thor. God of War Ragnarok made me want to experience more Norse stories. Even to the point where I went to look up that one Netflix show Ragnarok, play Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the only game in the series that I never touched, and go back and watch Vikings. I want some more Norse gods, or Egyptian gods. I'd love to see some adaptations of that mythology as well. But what do you think? Am I completely off base here? Do you have a favorite version of Thor? Do you want to see more adaptations of him? Leave a comment down below. I really want to hear your perspectives. and thank you so much for watching. If you like my takes on storytelling, please consider subscribing and liking the video. It would really help me out. Also, please remember that I will be self-publishing my novel, Dance of Frozen Death, at the start of 2023. I hope that you will check it out. I appreciate you. Do not despair.